Something we thought would never happen. Friday night football at Memorial Stadium is coming this year. We'll talk about it next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Head to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
All right, welcome in on this Thursday, fourth show of the week, making our way through the month of May. We got news, Connor, that, you said we never expected it, except I think over the last few days we kind of did expect that this was coming. We've hinted at it. We haven't really talked in depth about it. Now we're going to talk about it. Friday night football at Memorial Stadium. After years of resistance, Nebraska is handed a Friday night game this fall by the Big Ten. Illinois is coming to Lincoln on September 20th. It will be the 400th consecutive sellout at Memorial Stadium. That's assuming that UTEP, Colorado, and Northern Iowa sell out in August and September. I think that's a solid bet. And the Illini are going to be there against Nebraska, 7 Eastern or 7 Central, I think, on Fox. So the question is, because you can look at this in two ways, is it good or bad that Nebraska is going to have a Friday night home game in the Big Ten?
Depends on your perspective, right? I mean, I think for years Nebraska probably, was a little against this just because of Nebraska is a state made up of a whole bunch of small towns, and communities rally their entire towns around a high school football team or multiple high school football teams or whatever it might be. And then there's the just general tradition of like high school football is Friday night, college football is Saturday, and then the NFL is Sunday, and you kind of have your way starting there. I don't have to, that's not my primary concern. And I tend to prioritize Nebraska getting really cool environments. And, I think you want Nebraska to look good on television and all that stuff. And to have this game that would have definitely got lost in the shuffle on a regular Saturday of college football, to move it to Friday night, to make it a night game, to have it to be the 400th consecutive sellout, and to have it be a different, unique environment, I think is really cool. I was hoping for a bigger game, if it was Nebraska, getting a home Friday night game on this slate. But it makes sense for Illinois to be that game. So it is good for me. I'm with it. I understand the arguments against it, and I think a lot of that is just kind of rooted in we've always done it that way, and now there's some time to kind of get over that part. But I'm really, really okay with it. In fact, I'm actually pretty excited about it.
Google tells me that the definition of a male Karen is a male Karen. Well, Karen is someone who complains about everything. And so I was looking up what a male Karen is, and Google tells me it's a Ken or a Terry. So I'm not going to be a Ken or a Terry about this. I don't see like this pressing need to just complain for the sake of complaining because we think we're supposed to, and we want to complain about the fact that, oh my gosh, this is going to disrupt parking, and how are they going to have school on Friday? You know what a college campus is like on a Friday afternoon? I think we've spent time on a college campus on a Friday. There's not a lot of people there.
Nobody has class.
Right. The classes are out. So like they're going to be able to clear things out. This is not a Tuesday game. Nebraska did do the volleyball day in Nebraska event last year on a Wednesday, and that was okay. There were a few people at that thing. I'm fine with it. High school football has 4 months to adjust to this. And I know there's some big games scheduled for Friday, September 20th. in the Metro and in Lincoln. So play them on the 19th. Play them on Thursday if you can get the stadium access. Play them on Saturday. That might be kind of fun to play some high school football on Saturday, the day after Nebraska
Agreed.
plays. And maybe a couple of them will have to be played on Friday. I'm sure they will. But people will survive. And as you said, it's a huge stage on Friday night for the 400th sellout. Now, I wouldn't be in favor of doing this every year. And I did notice that Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State did not get saddled with Friday night, not just Friday night home games, but they didn't get Friday night games, period. UCLA, USC, they did. Nebraska, of course, did. But I'm just going to go into this thinking, hey, the majority of my work for the weekend is going to be over 24 hours earlier than it normally is. So then I can watch football on Saturday.
Yeah, my idea as far as the high school football, and I can't remember if I said it here or on my daily show on the Zone, but my idea with the high school football and how it would work in order to kind of alleviate that concern, if you have enough planning, you put it together where you play Nebraska football on a Friday night at Memorial Stadium, and then you have some sort of like high school jamboree on Saturday at Memorial Stadium when the stadium sits empty. Like that could be fun, and you could soften the blow and in that regard. I don't know if anything like that is a thought or in the works for this year, but I think people will work around it just like they always do. And they'll find a way. You got 4 months to plan, and I'm totally with you. I'm not gonna. I think it's a positive, and like I said, I think it's unique and different. I'm actually fun for it. I was interested. I'm in for it. I was interested in what Troy Dannon had to say last night on the network. And I'll read you this part of the quote. The other thing is, we could be upset about it all we want, but we're cashing a pretty large check from our television contract every year. And this is the price of that check. In order to fund what we want to do, you end up with a Friday night game here and there.
Yeah, it's okay. Nebraska's played Friday night games before, by the way. They've just been on the road.
Mm-hmm.
This will be the first Friday night game ever at Memorial Stadium. I was maybe a little bit surprised to read that. First non-Saturday game at Memorial Stadium in 23 years since the week after 9/11. So,
non-Saturday, non-Black Friday. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes. Black Friday would be Black Friday would be a Friday game. Never played on Friday night, but they've played on Friday. Right. Obviously, they played on Friday in November at Memorial Stadium for those of us with short memories. But the traditional Friday night during the season is not never happened. So I did also notice on the schedule that there is a Rutgers at USC game scheduled for 11 p.m. Eastern time on a Friday night. That goes after game 1 of the World Series on Fox. So you could be Rutgers fans and staying up until 2 a.m. to watch a Friday night football game.
Yeah, that's a little different. That's a little worse. Nebraska didn't get saddled with that, which is a pretty good deal. And keep in mind, like, unlike the previous year's Friday night games, Nebraska played in a Thursday night season opener last year. They've played it a couple Friday nights on the road over the last few years. Those games, I guess with the exception of the season opener last year, were on FS1. These will be on Big Fox. This is a broadcast television audience. Fox is, they've maneuvered their plans. They used to have Friday Night SmackDown in this place, and they took college football instead, and they wanted to get some good games out of it, and they did. I think there's some big brands in here, and you're right, Mitch. Everybody but Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, right? They all got the Friday night games. So
I think there might be a couple other teams in there that didn't get it. And with Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, they didn't get it because they don't want to play Friday night games. The other schools that didn't get it, they didn't get it because Fox didn't want them to play on a Friday night. It is considered to be, one of their big draws. Like this is a showcase game. It's not, you're relegated over here because you're not that important. So we're going to stick you on Friday night. No, it's something that Fox wants to get behind and wants to promote and wants to turn that into a time where college football can be showcased. So that's where we're headed. Whether people like it or not, college football is not this quaint little game of with amateur players that's played, only on Saturday afternoons. We're long past that and moving in the direction of it just taking over, everything that the NFL hasn't already claimed.
Quick note before we take a break and get off to a different topic here. You noted yesterday that the decision to play the Friday night game at home was taken out of Nebraska's hands. So
yeah,
it's like you said, the Big Ten wanted them to do it, and Nebraska didn't really have a choice to do it. It's not like they could have just said, no, thank you. We don't want to. With the expanded conference and all this inventory now, they're gonna do some things, just as Dan had alluded to. It's a big check, and this is one of the ways you pay for it.
Yeah, and as we talked about on Monday, all of Nebraska's non-Iowa Big Ten road games are homecoming for their opponents, and they're not moving homecoming games off of Saturday just for other logistical reasons, and they're allowing everyone to keep their homecomings on Saturday, including Nebraska when it plays Rutgers. So that wasn't an option for a Friday night. So they get Illinois. Could have been UCLA. That would have been fun on November 1st, but maybe sometime in the future they'll bring Friday night back to Lincoln, and we'll get something like a Nebraska UCLA game. But after the break, we're going to talk more related to the Big Ten, this time on the baseball diamond. Nebraska baseball got a victory on Wednesday at Charles Schwab Field. So we'll discuss that. First, please subscribe and follow us on all of the podcast listening platforms. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music. Give the show a rating, set your download so you get it every day. You can tweet at us at LockedOnNEB on Twitter or X, and send us an email at lockedonneb@gmail.com. Coming up next, as I said, a little dive into Big Ten baseball. Oh, I'm doing this. Thinking about your financial future? Think about Yahoo Finance, a great sponsor of our podcast. Maybe you think you've done it all. You've saved, you've researched, you've invested all that you can. So now you need to take it to the next level by using what every financial great uses, and that is Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been behind great investors. Whether you're seasoned or looking for a little extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you the tools and the data that you need in one place. Securely link your brokerage accounts and other investments, receive a comprehensive perspective, and the ability to look at your wealth in its entirety. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor. That's Yahoo Finance, yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination. Yahoo Finance, yahoofinance.com.
All right, Mitch, Nebraska baseball still alive at the Big Ten tournament in downtown Omaha. They beat Purdue yesterday 6-2. Now they'll have to wait for some things to happen in front of them. Ohio State and Indiana are going to play each other today in a winner's bracket game. Nebraska will get the loser of that game tomorrow, Friday the 24th at 2:00. And then if they advance past that, they'll have to beat whoever wins that game 2 times in order to get to the final. So that is the setup. Nebraska's driving out of the losers bracket. They pitched Big Ten pitcher of the year Brett Sears yesterday. He is now 9-0. He threw 6 innings. He struck out 9 and he walked just 2. He continues to have a really, really stellar year. But what do you think Nebraska's chances are, Mitch, to drive through the losers bracket and continue their stay into the weekend in Omaha?
Well, not great, but I would say first, let's talk about the positive. Nebraska got a win. It's not going to limp into the NCAA tournament now on a losing streak. It got to 35 victories for the season. So any of this talk and you and I talked Wednesday on your show. And I expressed some concern about waiting if you were Nebraska, how you probably wouldn't want to do that. And just wait like 4 days to hear your name on Memorial Day. It might get a little sweaty in the room. Now, I think we can completely eliminate that possibility with the Huskers RPI and having a victory in Omaha. So, relax, go enjoy yourself, which should have been part of the objective coming into this tournament to begin with for Nebraska. And they also got some good relief work out of Drew Christo, which was nice to see that he got it done on the mound at Charles Schwab Field. So those are good things. I don't know if Nebraska's pitching depth really allows for it, or lack of pitching depth, I suppose you could say. Lack of reliable arms in the bullpen will allow it to make a deep run here. But certainly Nebraska can get to Saturday. That's when that game against the winner of Ohio State, Indiana would take place, because Nebraska gets Thursday off. And as you said, we'll then play on Friday at 2 p.m. against the loser of today's game between Ohio State and Indiana. I think Nebraska, with McConaughey on the mound, has a good chance to win that one. And then, you get 2 wins in Omaha. That's good enough. I think if you're Nebraska, then it's gravy, and you're ready to go for next week.
As far as the regional, like the NCAA tournament is concerned, and how the team is kind of built, like, you obviously feel very, very comfortable when Brett Sears and Mason McConaughey are on the mound for that team. And then you feel very uncomfortable when anything other than that happens. So
True.
It's a team that is really built to, in a tournament format. It is a team that's built to win its first game and then hopefully be able to slay a dragon in their second game. And then you're in kind of the catbird seat for like a regional deal. And then the team that loses has to come back and beat you twice. That's the dream. Nebraska did not get off to a dream start in this tournament. So I don't know that it's a team that's built to make its way back through the losers bracket. With that being said, I like their chances, in a game on Friday with McConaughey on the mound. So you kind of roll the ball out and see what happens. It's funny because you play all year and you ride your horses, as everyone always says, but postseason hopes and dreams are usually placed upon a guy who's pitched like 12 innings all year's shoulders. Like, can you get something out of that person that is unexpected? And so that'll be the battle that Nebraska's fighting, either to stay in this weekend or next week in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I can't wait now that we're at this point. We're getting so close, and we'll have a guest on the show on Friday, so I don't know how much we'll get into this, but I can't wait until Monday to see what that's going to look like and where Nebraska gets sent, because it's possibly it's very likely, I'd say, going to be like a Big 12 or SEC destination. And could it be Texas A&M, following up on
in like March? Yeah.
As soon as the NCAA basketball selections were revealed, we all thought, hey, baseball's going to go there too. Could it be Arkansas again? That's going to be exciting to see. And no matter what opponent I was, Nebraska will be in that 2-3 game. No matter what opponent I was, I wouldn't be thrilled to see Brett Sears peering down the pitcher's mound at me as an opponent of Nebraska. So that's something to be optimistic about. And, he went out again last night and didn't look like he had his best stuff at the beginning of the game, gave up a homer in the first inning, and then just locked in. I mean, he has been a total bulldog for Nebraska this year in the way that he's pitched, but also I think in the way that he's steered the team. Because one thing about this Nebraska team, despite the fact that it tends to completely lay an egg like once a week, it's never gone on this tailspin. It's never, had an 8-game losing streak. And a big part of the reason is because of Brett Sears, because he's always there around the next corner and has always delivered for Nebraska baseball. Essentially he saved the season. Maybe that's a bit dramatic, but he's, overall he's definitely saved the season, but he's saved the current momentum multiple times for Nebraska through especially the months of April and May.
No doubt about it. But your season's going to come down to one or two. But you're right. As far as the general takeaway from this week, you got yourself comfortably and, with as little sweat as well, not as little sweat as possible, but less sweat than it was originally going to be into the NCAA tournament. So that's good for your Selection Monday hopes and dreams and your comfortability there. And we'll see what happens the rest of this weekend. But you were able to avoid complete disaster, which is the best positive out of it.
Yep. I'll be out at Charles Schwab on Thursday, taking out a little bit of baseball, talking to some coaches, writing a story about the Big Ten and, why it's not a better baseball conference. That's not exactly what it is. It's more like why, is the Big Ten going to turn a corner in the future with baseball, and how it's unfortunate that Illinois and Indiana and these programs that are strong and have had good seasons, are sitting here in this position where they've got to win or feel like they may have to win in Omaha just to make it to next week. So
interesting.
Look for that for me on Friday on The Athletic. After the break, we are going to get into some of what happened on Wednesday in Lincoln when Nebraska rolled out its recruiting and personnel staff in front of the media. First up, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? If so, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories in sports without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, it's Happer for the FanDuel Sportsbook, and it is getting to be winner take all time in the NBA and in the NHL. We are in the conference finals right now, and it's time for you to get in on this action. The FanDuel Sportsbook, they're trying to help you out. So let them. $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet with the FanDuel Sportsbook. That's $150 you could use on spreads or money lines or player props and more. I'm looking at the game tonight in the NBA. We got the Celtics, a 9-point favorite against the Indiana Pacers. Some people think the Pacers are just going to lie down and die in this series. Maybe you take them +9 tonight in that series. And then the Mavs Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are 5-point favorites already, looking ahead to game 2 in that series tomorrow. So just place a $5 bet, and it's $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Head to FanDuel.com/lockedon and get in on this deal and make every playoff shot count. That is with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, Wednesday in Lincoln, some of the media in the state convened, and we had a little press conference with Vince Ginta, who is Nebraska's Senior Director of Recruiting and Personnel. Vince is in his second tour with Nebraska, working actually for his 4th head coach at Nebraska. So he's in rare company there. He was hired by Bill Callahan in 2004 and took over the recruiting department after about a year or so under Callahan. Worked for Bo Pelini for a short time in 2008 before leaving the program, and then he was brought back by Scott Frost a few years ago, and then stuck through the transition to Matt Rule here in 2022 and 2023. So Ginta, who I don't think he's ever had a press conference before, so thank you, Matt Rule. He was joined by Ryan Callahan and Keith Williams. They're personnel guys at Nebraska. Ryan Callahan does a lot of other stuff too, dealing with academics and NCAA compliance and data analysis. And then Avery Gossett and Chris Coulter were also in on this media availability. They work in operations for recruiting, dealing with things like Nebraska's brand and how it's presented to recruits, and then also the official visits and unofficial visits that are so important for recruits when they come to Lincoln. Also, Troy Vincent Jr., who was not a part of this meeting, is a top figure on the recruiting and personnel staff. He was, I believe, unavailable on Wednesday. But this is a staff, Connor, that is like 20 people deep when you include grad assistants and students, and they're about to enter their busiest time of the year. I asked Vince like what a meeting of the recruiting and personnel folks would have been like when he got to Nebraska 20 years ago. And he said it would have been 3 people, him, an administrative assistant, and a student worker. So how times have changed in this aspect of Nebraska's program.
Yeah, it's an NFL. It looks like an NFL program. Like if an NFL GM were to walk through the door and they're to see all the departments and look at all the names and all the responsibilities that those people are doing on a daily basis, I mean, it looks and feels like an NFL program. There's a scouting department, there's a recruiting department, player development department. I mean, people that are specifically dedicated to one small area. What seems like, I guess, from the outside looking in, a small area of what we talk about, rather than the big picture of football. So it's really cool, and it takes a lot of organization. And we talked about this briefly yesterday on my show, Mitch. But I think it takes a lot of trust too. I mean, there's just so many people, and then you allow people, of course, to get up there and speak for you as well. And as we're about to hear from Vince Ginta, I mean, I think one of the keys here is just Nebraska staffers across the board telling the truth, including Matt Rule.
Yeah, well, listen to this. So, friend of the pod, Max Olson, is the voice you'll hear here at the beginning. My colleague at The Athletic, he's asking Vince Ginta a question here on Wednesday at the media availability. Here it is.
You guys had the fewest scholarship transfers this offseason among Power 5 schools. You were at 8. The average is 20. I'm curious, from your perspective, working here, what do you think Matt Rule and his coaches are doing right from the retention standpoint?
Honesty, and family. That's it. It's real simple. Be honest with people and up front. He has tremendous job of setting expectations, so you know what to expect as a player. You know what's expected of you, and when we're all honest and we operate in a great family environment, people are going to want to stick around. They're going to know that we have their best interests at heart. Maybe they didn't get to play a lot this year. There's going to be more playing time in the future, right? I think at the end of the day, though, honesty and family.
All right. There you have it.
Gets right in there. Yeah. I mean, I know what this question is, and here's the answer. And it's actually pretty dang simple. Honesty.
It's maybe like he's answered that before, or he was possibly anticipating that question. Now, it wasn't planted, I can tell you that. Max went in there, and there was no communication between Max and Vince beforehand. But it sounded, it almost sounded like that, because it was teed up for him, and he was like, "This is what I was waiting for, and I've got a message that I want to get out to any recruits who are considering a visit to Nebraska, but have not yet made that call."
I don't know how. It's funny because it feels like Nebraska. I mean, it feels like that's unique, and I think a lot of coaching staffs will say, "Hey, we're going to love you. You're going to be family. We're going to tell you the truth." Obviously, at Nebraska, it's one of those places where they really do mean it, and they show it every day. It's just, and Mitch, you would have a much better scope on this than I do, but like how unique is Nebraska's approach compared to others around the country or even in the conference?
Well, obviously, there's other schools who are doing this well.
Right.
We don't want to act like Nebraska is the only school out there that knows how to recruit, because they're coming in 20th to 25th in the national rankings. They're not scooping up all the 5 stars. So that's not the point we're trying to make here, that Nebraska is better than everyone else. It's just, this has changed so much, and various schools around the country are figuring out all kinds of different ways to connect with players. And Nebraska's way is what Vince just described right there, doing it with integrity, being honest. And, that trickles down into areas of the program that go beyond recruiting. And it's at the crux of what Max asked in that question, in that Nebraska is trending in a direction under Matt Rule. Now, we're not there where this permeates the whole program yet, because he's only been in place for 18 months, but they're trending in a direction where they're going to have success, or going to be set up for success, because those principles in recruiting they extend to the current players, and the current players see the things that they sell in recruiting and then want to stay as a part of the program, even when there's enticements to leave and go, who knows where else.
Yeah, it all connects. I mean, when you hear Matt Rule talk about other things within his program, I think specifically, like you just mentioned, players thinking about leaving or staying, going into the transfer portal or not, going to the draft or not, whatever it might be. What does Rule always talk about? Is like, hey, we're going to be honest with them. We're going to tell them where they stand on the depth chart. We're going to tell them what we have for them, our vision for you. But he also says, with some of those guys who are kind of on the fringe and who come up to him and ask him, he says, well, we do have a plan for you here. If you go somewhere else, they might not have a plan for you. And I think that's a big part of what Nebraska has to kind of offer as well. It's not just like blind, we're gonna love you and hug you and stuff like that. It is, I think part of that that love that Nebraska is showing and that honesty that Nebraska is showing is telling them, hey, look, here's the plan. Here's what I think you can be. We're not going to take you in our program if I don't think you're going to amount to anything. So like if you do the right things, if you check these boxes, you will be that at the end of your career. And it kind of becomes on the student athlete. It's a really, really cool kind of approach and obviously super honest and truthful.
Yeah. Vince and Keith and their group will be very busy over the next 4 to 5 weeks. Nebraska's got a bunch of official visits, more than a dozen scheduled for a single weekend toward the end of June, but all through June, official visitors will trickle in. And you remember last year, Nebraska made its recruiting class in the month of June. 13 commits from June 8th through July 1st is the number that I looked up yesterday in putting together the story that I wrote about this group that's on The Athletic here today.
Yep. It's about to get pretty busy in that world. That's for sure. Okay. That'll do it for us here on a Thursday. We'll be back and wrap up the week with a guest tomorrow. But first, a quick reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And it's now available on the Amazon Fire TV channel in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is what it's called. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today. It's available now on the free Fire TV channels app.